You guys seem to be liking this series. Links down below to the rest of my rankings on live-action Batman villains. But now we're on to Mr. Zsasz, one of the few big Batman villains who is often skipped in animation. However, can thrive in live action. In fact, appearing more times in live action than iconic Batman villains like Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow, and even Bane. With all those characters having only 3 live action appearances apart, while Mr. Zsasz has had 4. Which we're about to rank. In my own personal opinion, of course. Last place is Batman Begins, where the character makes a bit more of a cameo or an extended cameo as an inmate who Jonathan Crane testifies for. He's played by Tim Booth. This version is a hitman for Carmine Falcone, and we only briefly see his scars when he turns the back of his head. This iteration is last since it was a cool Easter egg. It's just that, it's an Easter egg. Or maybe a little more than an Easter egg. He doesn't even speak. Nor do we really see anything of the character from the comics in this iteration. Like I said, we only briefly see his scars. Although, even though that is the case, I do think that Tim Booth does a pretty good job, or at least the best that he can in a role that is, well, let's say, underwritten. With his facial expressions. Even though he doesn't even talk, the character still comes across as, well, a character, not just a extra. Therefore, even though he's at the bottom of the list, he's still not a bad Zsasz, just not really a character in his own right. As he's intended to just simply be a reference to the character from the comics, rather than be his own person. Third place is Birds of Prey, played by Chris Messina. Mazana? I am sorry if I mispronounced that, I probably did. While this version is probably the most comic accurate, being more nutty and mentally unstable, he's however very much underused in the movie. In fact, the trailer gave away that he dies. And the character overall could have just been replaced by any bodyguard or hitman. The role does not need Mr. Zsasz to be in it. Like before, his scars are briefly shown, although more in your face this time around. This version seems to also only cut himself when he kills a woman, not anybody. Which seems like a bit of an odd change, and also one that seems a bit sexist. Or really sexist, which I don't think works with the character of Zsasz. I do think that this version does deserve to be above Batman Begins, since he actually does something and is a part of the movie. Unlike Tim Booth, who like said was only an extended cameo. I also think that the crazy factor that's added to this version of the character, while it is from the comics, it doesn't necessarily work in execution. It feels like he's trying too hard to be edgy. It's not a natural performance of being crazy. It comes across a little too much forced out of the character. Especially in scenes where he doesn't need to be as crazy as he is. I didn't find much about this Mr. Zsasz compelling. Outside of his possible hints of him and his boss Black Mask being in a relationship, which I do think is interesting, but they do nothing with it. He's also overall pretty bad at his job because he got pickpocketed by a little girl, and somehow didn't even notice. I'm not someone who overly hates this movie like most people do. Personally, I think it's okay. In fact, there are moments I really like Black Canary and Huntress. However, Mr. Zsasz, in my personal opinion, is one of the weaker parts of this movie. Second place is Batwoman, where Zsasz is played by Alex Morph. This Zsasz I found to be a highlight of the entire show, being one of the best villains of the entire series along with Ivy and Alice. While he only appeared in 2 episodes, I found him to be a delight every time he was on screen, turning some of the more potential boring storylines into something worth watching. The character should have been used much more than he was, and if he was, perhaps it could be number 1. Well, I doubt it, but he could have been closer to actually topping number 1. However, with how much the character was used, which was very little, I do think the character very much deserves number 2. It's a fitting ranking for the character. Alex Morph also actually played a Joker henchman in Gotham, well, Jeremiah henchman in Gotham, where the actor I think also did a great job. He deserves more work in my opinion. And of course, number 1 is Gotham, where Zsasz is played by the future Metamorpho Anthony Carrigan, who is extremely charismatic in this role, and a great addition to scenes, especially with the Penguin. He's always snarky and sarcastic. either to his peers or even to his victims. Only downside is the character wasn't used more on the show, as he only appeared in 20 episodes overall of the 100 episodes of the series. However, when he is used, he just steals the show in every way possible. A simple highlight of the entire series. And I think the showrunners knew it, since he started off mainly as a silent killer, appearing in a few scenes, but in later seasons he would be given more lines, more scenes, and more to do. Which I am thankful for because the character really was great, and probably my favorite iteration of Mr. Zsasz in general. I might even like it more than the comic version of the character. He's just that good. And that's my ranking, which you of course can disagree with. And that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!